Hello, and welcome to our lesson on risk management. This segment will cover planning risk responses. Part 1. Planning risk responses involves formulating options, choosing strategies, and defining actions to manage overall project risk exposure and address specific project risks. This process is crucial as it determines effective ways to handle both overarching project risks and individual risks. Resources are allocated, and activities are incorporated into project documents and the project management plan as necessary. This strategic approach aims to minimize threats, capitalize on opportunities, and diminish overall project risk. Once risks are identified, analyzed, and prioritized, the nominated risk owner is responsible for developing plans to address each significant project risk. This significance may arise from the risk's potential impact on project objectives, be it a threat or an opportunity. Effective risk responses adhere to several criteria. They are proportional to the risk significance, cost-effective, realistic within the project's context, agreed upon by involved parties, and owned by a responsible person. Choosing the optimal risk response involves evaluating various options. Implementation of the agreed-upon risk response strategy involves developing specific actions, including primary and backup strategies as needed. A contingency plan or fallback plan is created for potential use if the selected strategy proves ineffective or if an accepted risk materializes. Dealing with identified risks involves several strategic options: transferring the risk, altering plans or procedures to mitigate the risk, preparing contingency plans, or accepting the risk. The risk can be partially transferred between involved parties, such as the customers, contractors, or other stakeholders. Transfer mechanisms include contractual incentives, warranties, penalties, or the utilization of insurance policies. Insurance serves as a protective measure against a broad spectrum of risks, encompassing various aspects of the project. Areas covered may include property damage, personal injury, material damage during transit or storage, equipment breakdown, theft, sickness or injury of personnel, and forward cover for mitigating exchange rate fluctuations. The choice of contract type is a significant method for transferring or allocating risk. In fixed-price contracts, where uncertainty is minimal, contractors are willing to quote a fixed price based on a well-defined statement of work. For projects with unclear scope and anticipated changes, a cost-plus contract might be more suitable, covering the contractor's expenses incurred in the project. Different contract types allocate risk differently between the contractor and the customer. In fixed-price contracts, the contractor assumes most of the risk for cost overruns. In fixed-price with incentive fee contracts, the contractor and customer share the risk, with the contractor accepting roughly 60% and the customer 40%. Cost-plus incentive fee contracts reverse the distribution, with the contractor assuming approximately 40% of the risk and the customer 60%. Tailoring contracts to project risks. In large projects, a diverse range of contracts may be employed based on the risk associated with specific work packages or deliverables. A project can utilize a cost-plus fixed fee basis for the highly uncertain work and a lump-sum basis contract for the mechanical works. Not all risks can be entirely transferred between parties. Even with fixed-price contracts, where the contractor ostensibly assumes the risk of overruns, the customer may still incur damages if the project exceeds the target schedule or if the contractor faces bankruptcy. To mitigate such risks, customers may enforce rigorous quality inspections and penalties in the contract. Contracting to mitigate risk. Risk often arises from uncertainty, especially when faced with complex problems or situations. One effective strategy to mitigate such risk is subcontracting with experienced parties who possess the necessary expertise. For instance, a manufacturer looking to minimize financial risk associated with tooling and equipment for a large, complex system might subcontract the production of major components to suppliers familiar with those components. While this alleviates the financial risk for the manufacturer, it introduces new risks related to quality control, scheduling, and overall system performance. Specifying the individuals or groups responsible for managing all risks within a project is essential. While risks can be transferred, they are never entirely offloaded. For instance, in the procurement and shipping of items from abroad, the risk of damage typically remains with the seller until the item is hoisted over the ship's rail, at which point it is transferred to the buyer. A party willing to assume high risk in a project usually demands a corresponding level of authority over the situation. Additionally, the party accepting high risk will typically insist on compensation to cover these risks. This dynamic is exemplified in cost-plus fixed fee (CPFF) contracts, where the contractor's risk is covered by compensation for all expenses, while the customer's risk is managed through oversight to prevent potential abuses. Risk mitigation strategies are designed to minimize the impact and likelihood of potential risks. These proactive approaches involve preventing actions, planning, and resource allocation to safeguard projects against uncertainties. Risk avoidance involves modifying the original project concept to eliminate or minimize potential risks. This can include actions such as removing risky activities, simplifying system complexity, reducing quality requirements, or changing contractors. In some cases, risk avoidance may entail removing specific work from the project to reduce its scope. While many risk factors can be mitigated through avoidance, complete elimination is challenging, particularly in large, complex, or innovative projects. Attempts to eliminate risk may lead to increased system complexity and introduce new sources of risk, potentially diminishing payoff opportunities. This is the end of this segment of our lesson. In the next segment, we shall discuss planning risk responses, Part 2. This course is presented to you by South Europe College. Thank you for listening, and see you on our next segment.